Okay, can everybody see this okay?
Yep.
All right. I'm assuming everybody in here is already familiar with Michigan City or Chamber of Commerce and LEAP, so I don't think introductions are probably needed there. But for myself, my name is Seth Spencer. I'm the founder and owner of SERA Solutions. We're a digital marketing agency based out of Michigan City. We've been here for about 4 or 5 years now, and we specialize in website design, digital marketing, and as of now, creative services, so video and photo. We've worked with a wide range of industries from local small retail to government to manufacturing. So actually one of my big interests in marketing is actually in manufacturing. So I thought this would be a really good fit. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll get started, but if anybody has any questions, you can throw them in the chat, jot them down. I definitely like questions and interactiveness. I usually look over everybody's websites or stuff beforehand, so I should be able to give some feedback there. So we'll go over a variety of different things, some of which I planned for a variety of different people to join the call, whether it was a small machine shop locally or a larger manufacturer. All of this advice really go both ways. So even if it seems extremely elementary or further in depth, it's definitely applicable to both. The first of which that we'll go over is Google My Business pages. Oh, okay, went out of order there. Well, yes, so we'll start with Google My Business pages first. We'll get there in a second. So first question, why digital? Why does any of this matter? Why am I giving this workshop? I guess that'd be 2 years ago now. Google did this really massive study across small businesses in the United States. I think that's also when I learned that a small business is defined as 500 or less people or something. So that was kind of crazy to me. But nonetheless, though, some really interesting statistics on that. What it found is that, well, it looked at what businesses did in their levels of marketing. So it could be, they had them in different rankings of if you didn't have any online marketing at all, so not a Google business page, not a website, things of that nature, and those that were doing e-commerce, Google Analytics, Google Ads, etc. And then compared those and did surveys on how much they were doing in revenue, growth, etc. And what they found was extremely surprising. Well, maybe not surprising, but to me it was validation on digital does work. And they found that those that were considered the advanced were 3 times more likely to have an increase in calls, leads, and sales. So that was a really huge metric and definitely gives kind of an insight as to why people should be focusing on digital. And of the top 20% of the advanced, 43% of them were doing international sales. So most likely through e-commerce or such there. So even if you're doing good digital marketing, it just shows the emphasis of what those top 20% of the advanced, what they're doing a bit more and what kind of the result is from that. There's a lot of overseas opportunity. And then odds are if they're getting an increase in growth and sales inquiries, they're having growth in revenue. So they were 4 times more likely to have an increase in revenue than those who didn't have an online presence or not doing a whole lot. More sales, more revenue, that's ultimately what we care about. This is an interesting one. So normally when I do workshops over the last few years, we'll go over Google My Business. We've started to kind of transition that out just because so many people have gotten the hang of it now and they utilize Google My Business. But what I have found is despite a lot of manufacturers in the area having more employees, larger budgets or such, they're still not paying many or much attention, if at all, to their Google business pages. So I am still going to throw that in here for at least a slide or two to make that a central point. This is probably something you're very familiar with, a general Google search page, but there's a few different things here worth pointing out. One is what we have at the top. I use this as an example to make sure I didn't pick on anybody. Over on the right-hand side is a typical Google business page. This is where you're going to find your hours, phone numbers, description, etc. And then over in the middle, which we'll get to later, you'll see an example of an ad that we're actually running. We actually run ads on our own business name as well, which is a strategy there. But yeah, so there's a lot of information here. We're going to be focusing on what's on the right-hand side currently. One thing I would say is worth noting, you'll notice right off the bat on ours, is that we have a pretty considerable amount of reviews, especially given our industry. So that's one thing I can relate to, especially if you're in manufacturing or any type of service industry, for business at least. It's pretty difficult to get reviews. Business owners are busy. I get that, but we've managed to get 29, which I'm really proud of. So I would definitely say it's worth putting that in like a process or strategy. Ask for reviews, upon successful delivery of a product, put it in email automation or something there. I think you'd be surprised, even if it's 1 out of 5 people leave a review. It actually does wonders. So now when people, for example, were to search website design in Michigan City, we're the highest rated in, I think, Northwest Indiana. So we come up a lot more often. It's free. So I definitely encourage that. But we also have photos. We update our hours, extremely important. So especially during COVID right now, everybody's hours are pretty twisted. So making sure that that's good. But then also even confirming holiday hours. I know I don't usually take as many holidays off, so I update that on ours. So if people do call on, say, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, people do. That's up to date on there. Google also sees that you're updating your information, so they're more likely to show your business page at the top. And then photos, I think that this is a huge opportunity for those in manufacturing. More times than not, I would say 90+% of manufacturers in the area have an outside view of their building that Google was nice enough to put up there from like 6 years ago. And it probably is not the best reflection of your business whatsoever. It's really inexpensive or free if you do it yourself to just take a nice landscape picture of the outside of your building, your front office, something along those lines. You could even see on ours, we had like a picture of our conference room. It gives something that introduces the kind of the vibe or atmosphere of your business, especially in manufacturing. If you have products, I would definitely show those off. Definitely try to use high quality photos though. And I definitely would not use any stock photos. So then this is kind of the fun part. We'll go over website tips and optimizations. I'm not going to go crazy in depth with how to do every single thing. I'm sure that you don't want me to either. But how I look at this is if you already have a web designer or developer, this is, knowledge is power. At least you know some general things that you should be looking for, and you can bring it up to them. Or if you know a little bit of coding, then that's, do that too. And I also think that this is one of those topics where people have heard a lot about websites, web design, digital marketing, and you would think that, years down the road, everybody would have, the best websites in the world. It's not the case. So I'll reiterate this, but I think it's always good to take a step back, look at things from a different perspective, and rethink what your site's doing for you. So what can a website do for a business? It'll depend, but in general, I always think that a website is a really good way to build the perception of your brand. It's the one place on the internet, I say, that you get to design your own layout, your own colors, the way that you want it. Whereas in other platforms, you're a little bit limited. It's your best place to generate leads. Again, you're not limited to like a Facebook call to action button or something. You can have the most complex form or simple form that you want, or a callback option. It's a way to make sales if you're doing e-commerce. Re-engaging customers. So after a sale or service, people are likely to come back and view what else you have. Employees, I'm sure that all of us have applied for a job at one point or other, and we've done it through a website or somewhere. And people who are applying for your company are going to be looking at your company online. So again, it goes back to how you present your company that people are applying for. And then lastly, providing support. If someone has an issue or they need to reach out to you, the first place they're going to go is, well, probably a Google business page, which is why that's important to have there, or your website. So keeping those in mind and asking yourself, is your current website doing that? So I thought about, before this workshop, specific to manufacturing and looking over some sites, what are the maybe quickest tips that I could give that would have a considerable impact. And people always ask how to show up higher on Google. How do I get in the first spot? There is literally no exact answer or science to it. There is like a general theory that Google puts out on, hey, here's some things that we'll say that we care about. And typically, if you do everything right, it still doesn't necessarily happen quickly, but I can promise you that if you do everything wrong, you're definitely not going to show up there. So, but I find that best practices over time, so that I would compare this to like us getting reviews on Google. We didn't get 25 in a few weeks. We probably averaged like 1 a month or something, but over the course of say 2 years, it adds up. The same thing will apply here. So one of the biggest things in manufacturing, service, or product is I would publish blog posts. And this is one of those things that we've heard a lot in our industry, is that we need to be doing blog posts, et cetera. It's one of those things where, it takes time, but, Katie and I had a conversation a few weeks ago. We've had interns in the past from local universities. Some of these things could be really good opportunities to get an intern from a local university in like a marketing, journalism, or business field, and have them, learn about your business and write some blog posts. They don't have to be books, usually like 500-700 words long, and they can be pretty general. But by posting blog posts, you're going to do a few different things. One, you're going to be getting a lot of keywords out there. So think about what your customers are probably searching for if they're not searching for your name exactly. So whether it's solving a common problem or support for that type of machine or part or those solutions, write about those, but then also it's a chance for you to prove your expertise and credibility. On our site, we look at our analytics, and it's always pretty interesting to see before somebody reaches out, the journey that they go through. And I can promise you it's never click on our ad. Well, not never, but like 99% of the time, it's not click on the ad, call us, and we have a meeting. It's, oh, let's see who they are, their about page, let's read some blog posts, or let's look at their services, and then they'll reach out. And I think that those blog posts definitely establish like, they know what they're talking about, so they do reach out. Another one is high quality photos and video. And this is a double-edged sword, which I'll go over later, but you definitely want to have high quality, but not high quality to the point where you're bogging down, people's connections and computers and they're trying to load your website. So again, I think this is something that's, worth making an investment in initially. Hire a local photographer, something to take some photos of your product. It's literally how you're perceived to the entire world, especially if you're doing international. And you can have them take a good amount of photos, create what I call like a photo bank, and then just use photos over time for other purposes as well. Clear call to actions. I was actually pretty impressed with the amount of manufacturing companies that were listing their products online and in detail. That's extremely good. What I found interesting is that a lot did not have any call to actions. So a call to action is just going to be quite literally, what action do you want the user on your website to take? And having a section at the bottom of each page or in the menu or something that floats that's, call now. Usually business to business and manufacturing sales isn't going to be extremely quick. So we want to make sure that we're at least guiding them towards something. Additionally, we have page titles, page URLs, and descriptions. This is a pretty big one. People seem to do okay on the page titles. although I would really try to maximize what you can put in that page title. This is a huge thing to showing up on Google. So for example, we're in Michigan City, but we offer web design to multiple cities. We create pages for each city we do web design for, and we include different photos or portfolio items that we've done in those cities. But you can imagine the page title could be called Valpo Web Design. The URL would be Valpo Web Design or Valparaiso Web Design, I think is what we did. And then we're gonna have a unique description for that. But give it a few months, now we're actually showing up on Google for those. So it's worth thinking about those. A lot of people never bother to put a description on the page, so then Google generates one for you, and that's not always what you want it to be. And then heading tags and image alt tags. This one's a little bit more in depth, but on some different builders, you can still add these yourself. But if not, this is still something I would encourage definitely bringing up to your developer. This heading tags are essentially you can think of it like the size font across your website and your web page. Usually the larger the text, that should be like, the page title, section titles. Those are going to be like H1, H2, H3, and it goes downward based on like the I'd say priority of the content. And then image alt tags is basically just telling Google what an image is in a code form. So if you're familiar with industrial lumber products, we did a site for them several years ago, actually quite a few years ago. And this is just kind of an example to show you what like an H tag and an image alt tag can be like. So we have like the primary page text, which is our products. That describes, exactly what's going on. Oh, actually, this is the home page and our products is a section. But it's still going to be like an H1 tag, signifying that this is an important section. And then below it, we have slightly smaller text. This will be like an H2. So it goes in chronological order there. We have images, which, in our eyes, we see, oh, that's definitely a crate or, a stack of lumber or a pallet. This means absolutely nothing to Google. All they see is the text below it. And not everybody puts text below their image. But even though there's text below it, it doesn't mean necessarily that's what that image is. So this is how I always say how we see it. And this is quite literally the same exact section on that page, but how Google sees it. And so I put a few different things here. In the yellow highlight, you'll see that H tag I was talking about. So actually that ended up being H3. The one above it would be an H2. But then you'll see what Google normally sees is what's highlighted in the blue there, which is just an image URL, and that's about it. But then on the right of that, you'll see alt equal crates. And then you'll see that down further like lumber, wood, etc. That's literally telling Google what it is. If you do this across every image on your website, whether it's your logo to a picture of the front of your business or anything along those lines, you're going to end up having these keywords and images that are relevant. So when someone, say locally searches custom crates, LaPorte, Indiana, or near me, this is going to have a much higher chance of showing up compared to a website without H tags or image alt tags. So sometimes you'll have a builder that says image description or quite literally image alt. I would definitely fill those out. It doesn't necessarily show up on the screen, but it's definitely there. User experience. I would definitely focus on this after, some things are very quick and easy to do, but you can have a secure website and all of these things, but if you don't have any good content or any SEO at all, you're not going to show up anyways. So this is definitely worth focusing on, especially once you get some of the basics down. Nowadays, the majority of websites are secure, which is really good to see. When we did workshops years ago, it would be the opposite. Like 90% of people did not have HTTPS or SSL on their website. If you don't, you can get it for free nowadays. And if it's not free, it should be like $10 a year, maybe, or something. And usually it's just click a few buttons and it installs. So I would definitely encourage that you do that if you don't have it. You're going to rank higher in Google. Your website's going to load faster. And nowadays with every browser update, if it's not secure, you're going to get that Google Chrome message or Firefox that says this website is insecure. So that's definitely something you need to make sure that you have done. It won't let a lot of people see your website. This is a really big one on a lot of larger websites in manufacturing, is clear and simple navigation. I could say that one a few times. Having drop-downs inside of drop-downs inside of drop-downs is not exactly the ideal way to make the user experience easy. So I would highly encourage getting a little bit creative with that. What we like to do is even just having a products or services page that, then you have the ability to make a very nice layout on that page. And it's really not cumbersome for someone to just have to click products or services versus having, 20 drop-downs inside of a drop-down inside of a drop-down, which actually quite a few people do here locally. If your mouse hovers the slightest bit, you're having to start over, and they almost never work well on phones. So just being a little bit conscious of that. We also notice interesting usage of font colors. It might sound elementary, but I wouldn't say it if I didn't see it a lot. Don't use a light gray font color on a gray background or a white background. It's not easy to read, and especially when you get on different monitors, sometimes that text doesn't show up at all. We have a lot of monitors here, and every once in a while we can't see something. So definitely pay attention to that, as well as font size. If you have the same font size all the way through your website, it's really difficult for people to actually see where they should be reading, as crazy as that sounds. This probably doesn't sound crazy, but people are really lazy. And if you read any statistic on how people behave on websites, they don't pay attention for long, and their eyes snap to the headings and bolded text. So definitely make sure to use different text there. And then we have simple contact forms. I know everybody wants to have basically someone fill out a client questionnaire when they're on your contact page, and so you know every single thing about them. I would discourage that unless it's like absolutely necessary. I find more times than not though, I'll ask a manufacturer, well, once someone fills out this form, what are you going to do? And they'll say, oh, we're going to call them and they get more information. And I say, okay, well then maybe we should just be doing like first name, last name, email, phone number, and message. There doesn't need to be what's your business address, what city, postal, and then so on and so forth. You'll end up getting that information, or you already know it. When people see 15 more fields, they're probably not going to fill out a form, especially if it's for sales, and ultimately that's what we care about. And then one of my favorite ones is optimizing for quick load times. This is always a really interesting one with kind of going back to those high quality photos and videos. There's quite a few people that will take that to heart and go out and get some really nice photos professionally done, and then they will upload 7 of those on their homepage. And to put it in perspective, a normal web page should be like a megabyte, 2 megabytes or something. And we'll see people here locally having like 30 or 50 megabyte home pages, which if you were to visit that, I don't know, 20 times, you'd successfully use up some people's data plans. So it's not going to load quickly at all. So what you can do, if you just were to Google like image optimizer, you can actually find some pretty good tools online where you can upload that same exact image. It will spit it back out to you. It will look the exact same, but it will be a lot smaller in file size. And we do this with every single image that flows through this agency that goes onto a website. And I'm sure we've saved a lot of people from long wait times. And that kind of transitions into, well, I guess we'll elaborate more on the speed part, but we see a lot of different statistics on what people are doing when a website loads slowly. So this definitely applies for a lot of e-commerce. People tend to notice even a few hundred milliseconds of lag time if they're used to that website. So if we're on Amazon and it's loading slow, or eBay, right, we're usually pretty noticeable of that. People are more and more used to that because that's where they spend a lot of their time. You click something on Facebook, it loads quickly. So when people are going to your website, they're not as tolerant of a page taking 5 seconds to load, especially if you have 50 pages on your website. It's a lot of waiting. So people aren't patient, and if your site's loading slow or if they encounter an error, they're probably going to go elsewhere to get a quicker experience and find what they're looking for. And they're probably not going to come back if they run into an error or a 404 or something. Quite a few manufacturers here locally, which I think is really neat, do a lot of international sales. Even if you're not doing international sales, something that might be worth looking into is a content delivery network. This is something that's been around for a few years now, but is a lot easier to set up, so local developers can do it. It's pretty inexpensive, $10, $20, $30 a month or so. But what it does is it places your website in servers across the country. So this would be like a typical diagram of if someone had a website, say like in the United States on the West Coast, and if they're having people look at their website from across the world to do like international sales or such. Quite literally, the longer that line is, the longer time it takes to load. For some reason, I found that really interesting when I was getting into optimizing for speed, is that you think of the internet and cables and you think, well, I mean, it's extremely quick. It doesn't make that big of a difference. Oh, it can make a huge difference. Australia could take 15 seconds to load, a local website's homepage, whereas it'll take 2 seconds for someone here. If you multiply that by 10 pages, that's a really long time to load. So the solution to this, especially because people are doing a lot of work in Asia, the Middle East or such, is a content delivery network. What this will do is you'll still have your website stored, like we'll call it the master site, somewhere here locally, probably in the US through Amazon, Google, etc. But then they'll have like smaller servers across the world that'll also have your website. So then when someone in Australia tries connecting, or Asia, you're gonna be looking at a load time of 2 seconds or so anywhere across the world. This still does make a difference even if you're East or West Coast by 2 seconds or so. So for example, we use a content delivery network even though we're just doing business across the United States because quick load times are important, especially for us. And I always encourage people to run a speed test through like an external service versus just loading it on your own computer or your own phone and saying, oh, my site's quick, it loaded right away. There's a few different reasons for that. One, you're probably connected to your company Wi-Fi, which hopefully is extremely good. So you're going to have a very fast speed. Odds are you've probably looked at your own website at some point in the past. So you have what's called a cached copy, which is your computer or phone downloads a copy and just loads it so it's quicker the next time. The reality is though, if someone's going to your website, it's their first time, they don't get the luxury of cache. And majority of people aren't on Wi-Fi if they're on a mobile device or such. And especially out here in Porte County, you probably have a 3G connection. So really making sure that you're optimizing everything is going to play a huge part. The reason I focus a lot on speed as well, it's one of Google's largest ranking factors nowadays, along with security. So if you have a really good website in every other way, but it's slow, you're still not going to rank very high. This is always a fun one, Google Analytics. I used to ask how many people had heard of Google Analytics, and nearly everybody would raise their hand, which I thought was interesting because nobody would be using Google Analytics properly at all. So I always go over this. And I suppose everybody falls victim to that though. So when I was looking before this workshop, we found that the overwhelming majority of people, if not all, had Google Analytics installed on their website. We find that more and more, that's actually a really good spot to be in, even if you're not using it, because at least you have historical data and you can go back and look at it. There is some things I'll point out that you probably can't do, go back and do, but you can do moving forward. And I would definitely recommend reaching out to a developer or your developer about this. More times than not, we have Google Analytics installed and we know usually a few things. We had more people visit our website, this quarter or something. It doesn't really tell you much. Maybe we see some people go, oh, we saw that they come from social media, but that's about the extent of it. Google Analytics can do so much more, and I would really encourage looking into it. The big question is, once they're on your website, not just how many or such, but what are they doing? What action? And most people do not track these. So we talked about, and most people already know, you can track how many people are visiting, where they're visiting from. This can be pretty important, especially for sales, where to focus at, and especially if you're doing marketing around the country. You can quite literally see down to like a subdivision accuracy where people are looking at. So we've actually utilized this even for people doing billboards. You'd like to think people don't use their phones while they drive, but they do. But we can see where billboards are placed, what impact they're having and such there. How much time they spend on a website, I can't emphasize on that enough. If you have 100 people visit your website, it means nothing if they spent a half a second on a page, which is common. And then the other side of that is sometimes you'll see people spend minutes on a page, which might mean that you have a little bit too much content on that page in particular or something. So something to be cautious of one side or the other. And then what are they looking at on the website? Like I said earlier, we look at, before people reached out to us through a contact form or clicked a phone call button, what all did they do? And we've gotten a lot of validation on, they're looking at our testimonials, portfolio items, our blog post. So people are, it's good to know that so that way you can know where to invest time at. So this is usually where a lot of places had stopped overwhelmingly. What I would encourage everybody to do is have conversion tracking. It's not built into Google Analytics by default. So if you've never had someone tell you, hey, we put conversion tracking codes across your website, or unless you've done it yourself, it's not going to be there. So what this is the ability to track specific actions. So you have to do a little code snippet for each one of these. For example, whenever someone clicks a phone call button on our website, we track that as a conversion or a lead, as well as if someone fills out one of our contact forms, etc. Normally those aren't tracked. So that's going to be extremely important though. Generally speaking, how many people visit our website means nothing to me. I care more about how many people are clicking the call button and filling out forms. And then that's what I look at. And then we can see, oh, they came from Facebook or LinkedIn or et cetera. So then that way, if we're running ads or spending money, we know where we should be putting more money at. Otherwise, you have no idea what's working and what's not working. And then also when you're in analytics, having the ability, if you are doing other types of marketing, a quick tip is if you're doing like say newspaper ads or a billboard or a trade show, you can use a different website URL and have it redirect or like an added slash onto your URL to be able to see how much that marketing piece is doing for you. I would use like Garwood's Orchards here locally. You'll see billboards for it here or there. The URL that they use on the billboard is not actually their website URL. You go to it and it redirects to their actual one, but that's their way of tracking how well their billboards are working. So you can still do traditional advertising and do a few tricks with Google Analytics to have it work. I would highly encourage everybody takes a look at that. Then this leads me to Google Ads. In order to really utilize Google Ads, you have to have Google Analytics. And in order to have Google Analytics, you have to have a good website. So that's kind of why I go in this order and why I still bring it up. I don't think that we've seen a single manufacturer doing Google Ads in the area, or at least any type of significant effort in it. And I think that this is probably one of the biggest opportunities for anyone in the area in manufacturing to increase their sales. And I would say in a pretty streamlined, predictable way. This would apply to even a small local machine shop to an international, I would say even like air compressor supplier, because it definitely applies to all of the above. So what is Google Ads? It's when you can essentially pay for clicks on a website. You see ads, whether they're visual, like images across a lot of websites, but then also whenever you're searching something, you'll see ads there too. You get to choose how much money you're putting into a campaign, what you show up for keyword-wise, what your ads say, so you have full control over it. This is something that in the screenshot, I have Google well, this says AdWords Express, and now it's just Google Ads Express. That's something that's a little bit easier. You can do yourself. You'll end up probably spending more money because that's how the automated strategies usually work. If you work with an agency, that's probably going to be the better choice. There might be some upfront costs, but in the long run, it's going to probably benefit you a lot more. They have the experience of what works, what doesn't work, and they can save you a lot of time and actually money too. So here's an example of how an ad appears on Google. Like I said earlier, when we search our name, we show up on a desktop. That's important for us to be number one. So that's, you'll see a variety of different features on an ad, and it changes all the time. But on ours, you can see that we have, our address, different site links, etc. And then you also have a phone view of when people are searching for websites in Michigan City and how that works. And we actually do get quite a few people who just click on the call button on our ad. And one of those clicks might cost us maybe a few dollars. But when you think of a few dollars in the realm of things, I mean, that's a very good return on investment. So that's why I say, even if you're like a local machine shop and someone's searching for, an emergency this service or such, it's an extremely good opportunity to literally show up at the very top, have them click call, and that's a sale. So when running an ad on Google, there's going to be a few different factors that determine when you're showing up. You really have full control over all of these. This could be time of day. For example, we're not running call ads at 11 p.m. at night, so you have control over that. Also the device. If you're doing, I don't want to discourage like mobile, but if you have an extremely complex website where people probably aren't going to be using mobile as much, you can always disable mobile on the ads and not have it show there. We kind of do this to a degree because we find that the majority of people looking for business websites happen to be on a business computer, not on their cell phone. And then geographic. If you are just doing stuff here locally, you can definitely arrange that and specify that. And if you're doing international, you can also focus there. If you're doing anything remotely international or even across the nation, I would definitely work with like a Google partner agency versus trying it on your own. If you're doing something locally, that's a little bit easier to get your feet wet on that. So, but regardless, that's generally like some really simple things that encourage a Google ad to show up, but there is a lot more. When you are running a Google ad or any type of advertisement, I would highly suggest having a page on your website that maybe isn't, listed in your menu, but you have off to the side. I mentioned that we have pages for like Valpo Web Design, Michigan City Web Design. We don't have like a list on our menu that says every city web design that we do. Those are just kind of in the background. But whenever we run ads, this is what we link to. And it's been shown that having dedicated pages with tailored content to those ads is going to have a 100+ % increase on the amount of people who are reaching out versus running a Google ad and then just having them go to your homepage or contact page. It's, someone triggered a keyword that mattered to them. Taking them to a homepage for them to just start all over and have to find what they're looking for isn't necessarily going to be the best route. So if someone's looking for local web design, we're going to give them exactly what they're looking for. Here's a kind of a quick example of not only the idea of having a landing page, but what to have on a landing page. Make it extremely simple and easy to use. This is like a banking example, but make the text extremely easy to read, use images that are welcoming. I always encourage real photography versus stock. People can definitely spot that very quickly. Some person they've seen online before. And then in this case, this bank wants somebody to open an account. Literally put those call to actions that we talked about earlier all over that page, the action that you want them to do. And you also see there's a really easy phone call button at the top right. Especially if they're on a phone, this is exactly what you want them to do. So Usually less is more with landing pages. You want to give them enough information to where they don't just leave and look elsewhere, but you don't want to overwhelm them. Some of those more features that I was talking about on Google Ads would involve like the display network. So I showed you a few examples of Google Ads and how those show up. We also have display ads, which is where when you're visiting any miscellaneous website and you see images showing up on the right-hand side, or if you think Amazon, for example, follows you because you'll look at something and then the next day you'll see it showing up on your sidebar. That's exactly what the display network is, as well as remarketing. Remarketing is either current customers or people who have just visited your website, showing them ads again, you know, a day later, a week later, etc. This is usually pretty important, especially in business to business and manufacturing. Odds are that people are not looking you up for the first time or researching for the first time if they're reaching out. Studies have shown usually it's 10 plus times people have researched a product or service in B2B before they reach out. So if you show up like the second time, you know, be sure to have some way to get back in front of them a week later, 2 weeks later or such. And then demographics, this is something I always suggest looking at as well. If you know that 18-year-olds aren't going to be buying your product or service, I would definitely specify, you know, age groups, genders, etc. You can save a lot of cost there. And then customer match. If you already have like an email list or an idea of who your customers already are, you can use this in a few different ways. It's going to be much cheaper to you know, get sales out of an existing customer who's looking. You definitely want to show up first in front of them than it is someone new. But even if you're showing up in front of someone new, use what you already know. And maybe you don't know, but you have a list. Google can figure that out for you and see, okay, here's like an email list of their current customers. Let's, you know, cross-reference that. And we see that, oh, they tend to be this age, gender, a multitude of other things and have interest in these categories. So that can always save a lot of money if you're reaching people who literally fit your customer profile. So we went over quite a bit of things. And like I said, there's going to be some that were elementary, I would say, like getting more reviews on Google. I would highly suggest that. Even to making sure that you have a description on Google. I think almost everyone I was looking at in the area did not have a description on Google. That's going to be what gets you to show up, especially if you're doing local or regional sales. Then to some website tips. Take an outside look at your website. I mean, look at it from a customer point of view. If you provide a service locally, try looking up those keywords. So if you do, say, machining for certain things, type that in and even specify Michigan City or near me. See if you show up, and if you don't, I would consider like, why don't you show up? And what can you do to get that? Whether that's, you know, getting a website updated, blog posts, etc. Also look at how quick your website loads. If you know, switch off of Wi-Fi and use 4G or 3G and try loading your homepage or something and see what it's actually like for someone to do that. And then also, if you're looking to advance your marketing further, the biggest ways and areas that you're going to be able to do that is Google Analytics and Google Ads. So right off the bat, I would be looking at my Google Analytics account and reports and seeing, you know, what are we tracking, what aren't we? And if you're not tracking stuff, or if it's broken, or if you don't have it, reach out to your developer or a developer and get that going right away. And then once you have good analytics, you're going to want to look into Google Ads. I think it's applicable for just about every single business out there, especially manufacturing. So that's where, if you're trying to do local, give it a shot on your own, maybe if you want to be more budget conscious starting out. But long-term, you're going to want to find someone that you can work with on an ongoing basis. So I know that was quite a bit, but if you have any questions at all, I definitely like questions, and I've looked over a lot of people's websites here locally. So I'm more than happy to give advice or answer questions if anybody has any.
Hey, Seth, this is Austin Wilkins. I was trying to get an idea. We don't really participate. Our company doesn't really participate on any level, on a major level with this particular channel. From a, from my aspect, I need to kind of get my management people understanding of this and, you know, understanding of what the benefits are, which you've laid out well, but also, costs. What's without generally what is reasonable to spend on something like this? Where do you see, the numbers falling?
When you say spending, are you looking at kind of across the board or like specific to a website or Google Ads or?
Well, I would say, from our aspect, I mean, we would, the way we would do it is we would probably, stick our toe in the water to see, what's working and what's not, because it's not something that we understand well. So I can't see us jumping in, to the deep end of the pool on this. But, where would you maybe recommend someone starting that hasn't really done anything with this? And then, what's reasonable to spend?
So well, I would definitely start off getting a website updated because that's going to be an investment that you make and will last years down the road. And if you're running Google Ads or trying to do Google Analytics, you need a good website. If you already have like a decent website, usually just some minor tweaks can be made, and that could be a few $100, $1,000 to make some updates depending. If you really need a website overhaul, then you're probably looking at a few grand or so at least. I always say that is definitely a worthwhile investment because everything gets much easier once you can do that. The Google Ads is usually, I always say that's the $1 million question is how much do we spend on Google Ads? There literally is no right answer. I try to be a little bit conservative with how I approach that because it's people's literal dollars there. We have clients, I'll give you some ranges that spend pretty introductory. I would say you don't want to spend any less than a few $100s per month. Because when you break that down, it's about $10 a day, say, and an average click is going to cost you, say, $2, $3. So that would be like an introductory budget would be a few $100s. But we also have customers who literally spend $20,000 a month on Google Ads. So it really depends. Usually what I say is it's digital, so you can track everything. So the second that you can see that you're getting sales from these ads, I would pour as much money as you could into it. Because if you're spending $100 and making 500, I don't know what stock is going to do that for you in 30 days, but that's where I would put my money, and that is where we put our money. But hopefully that's some type of idea. You can start off smaller and then literally give it a few months, I usually say, to get enough data if you're spending a few $100s. And I mean, you should be able to see how many phone calls you got, how many forms were submitted, and be able to see how many sales you got and how much that was worth for you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that?
I have a quick question. So one of the things that I've noticed that's been popping up on a lot of websites lately is these chat bots, where as soon as you log into a page, it constantly is asking you, what can we do to help? Ask us now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so well, definitely mixed thoughts. I say that because some places you see on like a more corporate level, I always kind of laugh at car dealerships. I know my local Dodge Jeep Ram really well, and I know that there's not a guy named Kevin there. So when I see Kevin show up on every single page, I'm a little bit like, okay, it just seems a little bit too salesy to me. But for the most part, like depending on how you approach it, I think it's generally a good idea. We enabled it on a few pages on our website, not every page, but if someone has taken the time to look at a specific service of ours in a town, we've definitely had, say even 5 people fill it out right in the past few months or so, but who's to know if they would have filled out a contact form? Oftentimes that chatbot can end up being a form if we're not able to answer right away. So It's worked really well for us. There's some really cheap solutions to it, so I definitely don't discourage it. Even if it's not exactly a live chat, but it seems that way, it'll just shoot you an email at the end if you're not able to respond. So there's really not a downside to looking into it, as long as I would say it's from like a reputable service, which I try to think of a few offhand, but I would say probably just going with one of the top few results on Google is going to probably put you in a good spot. Some are more expensive than others that I probably wouldn't recommend starting out with. So like if I would not be spending $100 a month on a live chat system at all. You're going to be better off with ads there. At the end of the day, I would say those are probably best left to places that are already getting a lot of traffic to their websites. Just because you have a website doesn't mean you're getting traffic, and spending money on website features when there's 3 people a week looking at it isn't going to be a good investment. So spend that money on ads or updates or other marketing to get traffic to your website.
Thank you.
It's a good question though. Usually they're easy to install though. You just send a developer a code and they paste it in. If they try charging you more than an hour, they're probably not being honest about it.
All right. Any other questions for Seth? Okay. Well, this session was recorded, so we can share it with anybody that was here, and then we also will go ahead and share it with anybody that wasn't able to attend today. Definitely, if you have any specific questions, you can always reach out to Seth. You can also reach out to myself here at the Michigan City Chamber or with Mike over at the LaPorte Economic Advancement Partnership. You know, Seth is definitely an expert in what he does. There are other businesses that do what he does as well. Variety of options. Seth definitely brings that return on investment, looking at, how do you start looking at implementing some pieces and making sure that's working before you start just throwing a bunch of stuff on there. So I really appreciate that. I think that's important as any business who's starting to look at, spending money to acquire new business, new clients. They need to make sure that what they're spending it on is working. So really appreciate that. If there is anything other topics that any of you would like to see the LaPorte County Manufacturing Forum address as we kind of stick with this virtual format for the next couple months, please let either myself know or Mike know, and we would be happy to do more workshops like this. That's about all I have. Mike, you have anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank Seth. I mean, every time I watch or get more information on digital media and websites, I mean, it's just amazing how many things you pick up, and you did a great job of presenting the information. And if we'll try to get this out to some of the other partners to make sure that they have access to it. And thank you all for joining. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah. One other thing that I would mention too is, Seth brought up the using interns to do some of your marketing pieces for you, and to especially like blog posts and taking pictures and, putting stuff on social media or doing short videos about products or whatever it might be. The state of Indiana does have an Indiana intern program that if the student qualifies, they will pay a portion of their wages back to the employer. So we had a rep from the Indiana Chamber come and talk about 2 weeks ago on that. We recorded that session as well, and I have some flyers. So if anybody has interest in that and learning more about that program, I'd be happy to send that off to you. So
Could you get some of that to me, please?
Yes. Most definitely. Interns are a great way to get some things done that you kind of keep putting on the back burner, and new ideas and innovative ideas that they can bring to the table as well. So
yeah, and I would add on to that. I think it's a really good topic. When we use interns, even if say like your business field is not in digital marketing, that student is still more than likely able to get credit through, you name the university here locally. So everybody who's done an internship for us, for example, has gotten credit through Ivy Tech, PNW, VU. So even if you're not paying them $15 an hour, right, it's going to be like an intro, wage for them. They're still going to get the benefit of not having to do a course in school, which I'm sure they'll appreciate that time-wise as well. So there is definitely a lot of benefits for both parties, but you'll definitely get fresh ideas and and that's without taking advantage of any Indiana earn or such there. So I would definitely encourage at least trying it. It's a pretty neat experience.
Right.
But thank you, Katie, and
Yeah, thank
Mike,
you
for
again,
having
Seth.
me.
Really appreciate your time today. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Awesome.
You
Have a good
too.
day, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.